So, I just watched Bohemian Rhapsody. So, I wouldn't say that this is a bad film. It's competently made, the performances are good, there's nothing specifically about it that is really bad, but there's also nothing about it that's particularly good either. If I had to pick a term to describe it, I would say that it's just very pedestrian. Everything is done serviceably. The period costume and the detail and all that is very well done. The performances, particularly by Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury, is really good. But when you get down to it, competent and fine isn't really enough for the subject matter. As you might be able to tell, I am quite a big fan of Queen, so when I heard they were making a movie about Freddie Mercury, my first instinct was, oh, cool. And then I heard more and more about what was going on behind the scenes. They had initially cast Sacha Baron Cohen as Freddie Mercury, which I thought was perfect casting, and I thought, again, that actually got me more interested. And then he left the project over creative differences with Brian May and Roger Taylor. There was a point where they wanted to do half the film about Freddie Mercury's life and then the second half about what Queen did after he died, which no one wants to see that movie. Very glad they didn't end up doing that. But then I think he came back for a bit and then left again because they weren't really looking to do like a warts and all portrayal of Freddie Mercury. It was just a bit too squeaky clean for him, so he left again. And they got in Rami Malek, who is a good replacement. He does a good job. But at the same time, can't help but thinking of what might have been with Sacha Baron Cohen. And then behind the scenes as well, you have all the stuff that happened with Bryan Singer, the director, who is notoriously unreliable, turns up late to set. Apparently he would get into fights with Rami Malek, where at one point one of them threw a chair at the other one. And then after they had their break for Thanksgiving, he just didn't come back to the set. And so they ended up getting in another guy who I've forgotten the name of off the top of my head. I'll put it up on the top of the screen there. But he's the guy who is directing the new Elton John film. Finished the second half of the movie, basically. But under Guild rules, it's still under Bryan Singer's name. Even though he didn't make a fair chunk of it, Bryan Singer is still credited as the only director. Given all that stuff that happened, it's kind of a miracle this film is as competently put together as it is. But as it stands, it's still just not that interesting a film, considering the subject matter. They talk at various points throughout the film about how Queen were quite experimental, particularly in the earlier albums, and just did anything they could to kind of try and get themselves noticed, and you see some of that in the film. So it's weird that the film about this experimental band doesn't do anything unique or experimental throughout the process. You're just stuck with your very basic music biopic. There's the band gets together, there's a bit where they have a falling out and they go their separate ways, and then they get back towards the end, and along the way you learn bits about their personal lives, and it's just been done before. And speaking in terms of the personal life, this is, I think, going to be something of a contentious issue for a lot of people who watch this film, is that they didn't really do much with Freddie Mercury's sexuality. So Freddie Mercury was bisexual, although I believe he did tend more towards men. The film does show his relationship with kind of his first love, Mary Austin, who he did very nearly get married to, and then as the time goes on and he's touring with the band and he starts to realise that he's into men as well, he comes out to her and says, Mary, I'm bisexual. She just replies to that with, Freddie, you're gay. In real life, Freddie was bisexual. He had relationships with other women after Mary Austin as well as the men. And then kind of the main man in his life, Jim Hunter, or Jim Hutter? I think Hutter. It'll be on the screen, whichever one is right. He gets very little screen time in this. He feels particularly kind of hard done by this script. He gets they get 2 scenes together pretty much, and then in the end credits it does the whole thing where it's like, Freddie and Jim were together for the rest of Freddie's life. That doesn't really fit with what you showed on screen. And also they move up ahead of time when Freddie got his AIDS diagnosis by quite a few years, so that it happened before they performed Live Aid. The film does culminate with the Live Aid performance, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But by moving this ahead, you kind of, for most biopic things, I am fine with a bit of a skewed timeline, you know, like there's ones in this where it feels like songs off one album are being recorded when they're doing a second album or whatever, you know, but stuff like that doesn't matter too much, you know, details, but something like his AIDS diagnosis, that is a big thing, because once you, like, particularly back at the time when that happened, once you had that, you did not have as long as this film makes it out that Freddie Mercury had with it, really, because there weren't that many effective treatments. And so it's not so much a suspension of disbelief thing as it is just kind of, it puts an unnecessary pathos on things for the sake of some contrived drama, which there's more of that as well when Freddie goes off to do his solo album. They make it out as though he's some kind of traitor who's breaking up the band, but before he had done his solo album in real life, Roger Taylor and Brian May had both done theirs. And I do wonder just how much influence Roger Taylor and Brian May had on this film, which I'm guessing it was quite a lot, because they come off looking fairly squeaky clean in it. The only one who gets any kind of sort of real critical look at him is Freddie, which is fine, he's the main character, but at the same time it doesn't go far enough with that, and so it feels like a lot of the time bad things are happening to Freddie, but he is not the cause of his own problems, and that is a mistake when you come to this kind of film. I want to see something more like, say, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, where they very clearly painted it that Ian Dury was kind of a monster and a bit of a horrible person, and that made a far more interesting watch than this film. I know no one's seen Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, but you should, it's really good. But yes, as I said before, they end this film at the Live Aid concert, and they just show the entire set, which, I mean, it's impressive how they recreated it down to every detail, and Rami Malek lip syncs to Freddie Mercury's vocals very well, but at the same time, if I wanted to watch the full Live Aid set, I could just go on YouTube and search for the Live Aid set, which, by the way, I would recommend doing, because it is possibly the greatest live performance by any band ever in anything. I know that's hyperbolic, but I don't care. Queen aren't that awesome. But it just feels like the movie was 2 hours 15 minutes long. If you would cut that down to just him singing Bohemian Rhapsody, which, you know, the title of the film, the most important song, if you just cut it down to just him singing that and the crowd's reaction to that, then maybe, just maybe, it would have made more sense than showing the whole bloody thing. And I've seen people praising this as the ending, and I think it just felt like the most self-indulgent thing. I think a big part of why this film bugs me is because I am a Queen fan, and I kind of wanted better for their movie, but at the same time, I wouldn't say I was disappointed in this, because I had fairly low expectations going in anyway, given what I knew about what had happened behind the scenes. So I would say, if you just want to learn kind of like a Cliff Notes version of Queen, this would be an okay way to do it. You know, it's not a bad film, it's a perfectly finely made film, but at the same time, in the same amount of time that you watch this film, you could just watch the 1986 Live at Wembley concert on YouTube, which, yeah, I would recommend doing that because you'll have a better time and you'll see Freddie Mercury himself. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this video in a comment below. Have you seen the film? Let me know what you thought of that as well. And also, thank you to the people who watched and commented on my Frankenstein Myth videos. That means a lot to me. If you haven't seen them yet, the playlist will be in one of the videos here, so be sure to check that out.